Hey, how you doing? Sitting here today, waiting on a call, like I did in the 70s, lots of times. You know, these rotary dial phones were the main communication, certainly through the 60s and 70s, and even before that and beyond that. Oh, hold on. Hello? Jim? No. No Jim here. You must have the wrong number. Okay, bye. And that is what happened a lot. Wrong number. Well, this had no display, no caller ID, nothing. So when the phone rang, you had no choice but to just pick it up and see who's there. There was no way to tell. And just like this, it had that a metal bell inside the phone. So it always had that loud metallic sound. Now, you could adjust the volume a little bit with a wheel, sort of a control on the phone, but you had to let it loud enough that you could hear it anywhere in the house. And when you went to make a call, you'd pick it up, you hear the dial tone, and you made your call. And there's a busy signal. That busy signal, like if you ever remember hearing that, that meant someone on the other end of the phone was on their phone, whoever you tried to call. You had no choice but to hang up and try again later. There was none of this, you'll be in the queue, for whenever they hang up. No, there was a busy signal, and you just hung up and tried again later. Now, another thing, I used to call time and temperature a lot. Each area had its time and temperature number locally. So they tried to pick a number that was easy to remember, like the last four might be 1212 or something like that. But you had to call time and temperature. You didn't have anything in your house that instantly was connected to some internet. There was no internet where you could get the right time of the day or the temperature outside. So you would call time and temperature a lot. So for example, let's say the first three numbers are 845. So you would dial 845. And sometimes your finger would slip out of the dial. Well, that meant you start all over. There was no backspace or anything like that. You hang up the phone, so it resets, and then you dial again. Just another one of the oddities of using this phone. This number dial had to come the whole way around to this metal plate, or it wouldn't give you the correct number that you were trying to dial. So you just hang up, start over. And this corded phone only had a certain distance it would reach. Now, you could buy another one of these flex cables that was longer, and I know a lot of people had their phone in the kitchen, say, and they would have like an 8 or 10 foot cord hanging on here, so they could walk through the kitchen, like maybe even into their dining room and stuff, while they were still on the phone. But you always had this cord, and from people picking it up and then turning it around and stuff, this cord would get twisted and become knotted. And so you'd be trying to like hang the phone upside down and let it spin to untwist the cord because it would get all knotted up. So not only was there this cord, there was this cord. All these old rotary phones were corded. You had to plug it in your wall of the house in a jack hooked to the phone company. Now, normally, these were either in your kitchen or maybe in your living room. They had this tabletop model, and they had the wall-mounted unit. Usually, that's one of the two you would get from your phone company. But that was a time, too, when there was just a phone. Most of my life growing up, I had a phone in the house, and it was actually on the kitchen wall. And the house had to have the jacks that this plugged into. And a lot of the old houses had one jack. And it was usually either a little metal plate on the kitchen wall where you would hook your phone, or maybe a jack out in the living room. There weren't many jacks in the houses built in the 50s and 60s, stuff like that. As a matter of fact, not only would you be on your line, but so could your neighbors. There was a thing called a party line. And a party line meant that the phone company ran the same line to several houses in your neighborhood. It's hard to imagine how that worked, but it didn't work too well. Normally, when you hear the phone, you just pick it up. And it could be for a call for the neighbors, or it could be that you went to make a call, outgoing, you pick up the phone, and the neighbor is on the phone. So there, you hear them talking. And then you just go, oh, okay, you're on the phone. I'll try later. Bye. And just hang it back up because they've got the line tied up. Now, pretty much by the mid-70s or so, the phone companies phased out these party lines. It was a bit of a disaster in the beginning. They were cheaper, but it didn't work so well. Once you had private lines, then you had one line going to one house with one number. So you knew exactly who you were getting, and you didn't have the problem of picking up your phone and the neighbors on it. Now, once you got that private line installed to your house, then, like I said, it was one house. You still had the same phone jacks in your house and everything. You didn't notice anything internally, but they switched it to a private line. Now, once the mid-70s hit also, availability of the touch tone push button numbers started rapidly growing. And then you had something like, you had phones that had 10 stored numbers, so you could store 10 speed dial numbers, which was amazing for the time. That was some really high-tech stuff then. And you got away from that metal sounding bell ringer. It had an electronic ring. So you didn't have that bell sound if you didn't want it. Now, they were still corded. So what happened was most of the people started installing more jacks. And after that time, I actually got to the point where I was putting jacks in my garage or my basement and all kinds of stuff. You could have a phone anywhere, but installing your own jacks became more common at that time. And also in the 70s, I know by that point, my sister and I were becoming teenagers, and my sister used to be on the phone a lot. I mean, she would spend hours on the phone at a time. That was a little bit of a problem for getting on the phone at my house in particular. Now, as far as phone numbers, phone book, yellow pages, white pages. Yellow Pages, if you needed to call a hardware store to see if they had some part you needed for a project you were doing at your house. Yellow Pages, look up hardware, find the store you want, and you could tell by the address too. Call them up. Okay, we got that part. I'd go over and pick it up. Fine. And the white pages were just for the residential people in your area. The phone books were all divided by a certain area code. Another thing with those phone books too, you would write numbers in the back of that phone book throughout the year, because each year a new phone book would come out. And these phone books were thick. So during the year, you would have numbers you wanted to call. Oh, I got to remember this number. You'd write it on a page in the back of the book that was just blank spaces. Write all those numbers in there through the year. Well, when the new phone book came out, you would be sitting there copying the numbers from the old phone book into the new phone book. That's when it became handy to have sort of a Rolodex system, something like that, where you could keep your numbers and don't keep them in the back of the phone book, unless you want to rewrite them every year. In the 90s, I remember I had a fax machine. So once I had a fax machine, I needed a second phone line to my house. And you could do that. You could get multiple phone lines to your house. So I needed one just for my fax machine. Now, around the 2000s, technology really started kicking in, and you could have one corded base station that was tied with radio frequency to other remote base stations that were basically just chargers. So I had a phone where I hooked one of them into the phone jack in the house, and I had 3 other remote base stations where you could just plug in the wall and it was just basically the charger. But you could sit your phone on there and it would ring also. Then you actually could have, a base station in your basement and not even need to run a phone line. You could just sit it down there as long as this station could transmit to the other ones in your house. You could take them anywhere off of that base station. Take them out in your yard if you wanted to, which probably was the first time I had a phone in the yard. So, hard to imagine today, but yeah, before that, you didn't really have a phone that you carried out in your yard with you. Now, as time went on, even in 2010s and stuff like that, these phones and house phone wiring and stuff started to really become obsolete. Because by the 2010s, you could have internet phone, which was your phone service connected through the internet and talk to your phone. You weren't hooked to the phone company. You just went on internet phone. And I know I did that for a while. But now you don't even need a home phone. You've got your cell phone. It's been a couple years now since I even had this hooked to my house, because everybody now just has a cell phone with its own number and everything. So, and you can walk them out in the yard. You can drive them across country. Doesn't matter. Big change since the 60s and 70s. Now, until the next time, take care of yourself, and I'll see you later.